Dennis has already gotten us started thinking about feelings of shame. And shame is one of the most powerful human emotions. It is universal at different times in life. And whether it's healthy shame or whether it's unhealthy shame, there are emotions. Now, I'm sure some of you sitting here are thinking, I just don't connect with these shame feelings. Maybe the younger generation does. So perhaps it helps to think of shame as sort of a family of emotions. We're at the bottom of page 2 in your handout. We asked a group of Metro staff the question, how does shame make you feel? And these are some of the answers that we received. You can see naked, covered up, hidden, unaware, and these are just a few of the ones that we received. And of course, this isn't all the time. Situations come up and these things can be triggered, but it's a whole family of emotions. And on the next slide, on the top of page 3 in your handout, are a bunch more responses we've had, different words that we associate with shame. I would just like you to take about 30 seconds, go down that list, and check any that you associate with your experience, past or present, of shame. Just kind of put a check. You're not going to have to tell anybody about it. Just check them. For every check you put on your list, there's probably a story behind that can be opened up in conversations like the one Dennis had. And we have noticed generational differences. I put a list of like twice this many terms in front of a group of gals. Nobody was 30. They were all under 30. And there must have been at least 30 terms on the list, and I asked them to check one. Do you know 5 of the six checked the same word? And it was fragmented. They felt fragmented. I never would have checked it, but it was very interesting. And of course, that's what we discussed in our studies together the next while. Shame also comes with some inner self-talk. What you say to yourself when you blow it, when you fail, when you do something like that. We asked some staff, what do they say to themselves when they feel ashamed? And these were some of the responses. I don't measure up, I suck, I live in pain, I can't get it right, I'm not good enough, and you can read the rest of them. These are some of the things that we say to ourselves. And usually we didn't make them up. It's not unusual that those phrases or words like them were spoken to them in context, perhaps long ago. So these are often echoes. The self-talk, now at my age or your age, is often an echo of words that were spoken to us or body language that said the same thing to us in the past. So we share these things with you as people helpers to help you tune in to the body language and the self-talk of people who are struggling with shame. Like one of my 20-something friends, I'd just like you to listen to her story and especially listen to her self-talk.
Hi, my name is Hannah. I live in Denver, and I am on part-time staff with the Navigators, the 20s mission, with my husband here. And I just wanted to share a little bit about my story with shame. Started out, I was a pastor's daughter. I grew up in a Christian family. We traveled a lot. My parents were kind of like parenting gurus for a lot of people. Like they did a lot of conferences and like we traveled to different countries telling them how, a good family is and what you should do to make your kids obedient and what is the best model for a godly family. And that put a lot of pressure, I think, on me to perform really well, to kind of hide anything negative that I felt or really be who I was. I felt like I had to perform all the time and do what my dad wanted, think what he wanted. And a lot of what added to my fear was my dad was secretly physically and emotionally and spiritually abusive. And for me, it was really scary because that wasn't known to other people, and I felt like I was alone, and at the time I felt like it was all my fault, like I had to be a really bad girl for these things, for my dad to do those things because he was so nice to people, and I thought, that there had to be a problem with me and that I was the problem, and so I had a lot of shame from even from when I was really little, and out of that I hid really well. I wanted to kind of prove that I wasn't what I feared I was from my dad, and so I became really good at emotionally reading people and figuring out what they wanted you to be, and I was that person for everyone. And for my dad, I did that all the time because I wanted to be safe, and I felt that if I was safe, he wouldn't lash out and add to my shame pile that was growing and growing. Yeah, so I hid really well for a really long time, and I did it under kind of the Christian good girl bumper sticker. So that continued until probably about a year or two ago, and God just gave me this experience that really showed me my story and my pain and my wounds, and that was a really hard thing to go through, but it was such a gift to my life because for the first time I saw that, wow, like I'm not worthless. And you hear that and you're like, oh, I don't think I'm worthless, but I really felt that was true underneath all my layers. And so he showed me what he thought about me. He showed me what I was doing that I didn't need to be doing to try to prove that wrong. And he really showed me who I really am, who he made me to be, which was awesome because I like her. I'm great. Yeah, so it was a huge gift to me, and since then, God's kind of helped me when I feel like I'm about to, emotionally read people to manipulate them to like me or to define me or whatever. He will gently be like, do you know what you're doing right now? You're about to do that. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't, but he's really been helping me see that and walk into being freed from my dad defining me and other people defining me because he already has. And so that has been just a snapshot of my journey with shame, and I guess I've just seen that God is really faithful in helping you in his timing see yours and walk into where that's from and what he wants to do with it. And yeah, so I guess through my shame it has been a gift in my life to see God in a new way.
I love that woman. Sometimes our feelings of shame are not expressed verbally. They're expressed in body language. What do you notice here? You know they're feeling shame because of what body language? Covering?
I grew up with a shame-based identity, and it wasn't until I was about 14 that I could actually look at someone in the eye.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. You turn your face, eye contact, covering. What do you see here? Anything? Turning away, clothing. We'll hide with clothing. These are the body languages, and again, as people helpers, it really is good for us to learn to recognize shame before a word is spoken. Dennis?
A word that I'm hearing a lot more as I talk to young people now is the word invisible. I feel invisible, and oh yeah, I really want to be invisible. And it relates to this area as well. Okay, so from informal research, I think I embarrass my children sometimes because when their friends are over, I'm putting out these images all over and I'm asking them how they respond. And one of the questions I ask them is, pick an image out of these images that indicates how you feel about yourself. And, you know, I've done this with males, females, a cross-section. This is my own informal research. The number one image that they select on how they feel about themselves, and this is the age group, my testing was in the age group from 17 to about 27. Okay, that was in that age group. Here's the number one image that they chose. Yes, it is a pile of manure. The language behind this is, I feel like crap. I'm a dirtbag. I'm unworthy of love. I'm deeply embarrassed. No one could ever forgive me. If you really knew me, you'd never come close to me. Wow. It's hard to receive the wonderful things God offers. About 3 years ago, I was invited to go to a different state and spend a day of training with 26 campus directors of another group other than the Navigators. And they had ministries in this state up to 400. They had some booming ministries. They asked me to come and speak on the topic of shame. I said, sure, but why shame? I don't get a lot of requests for that. 3 years ago, didn't get many. And here's what the leader of this group said. So many of our students, and we want them to multiply generationally. They had a vision for generational ministry. So many of our students that we try to develop have so much wounding from their past, and they're so involved with pornography and sexual stuff that they are full of shame and they feel unworthy to minister to anybody else. So we're trying to develop these student leaders, and they're shot so full of shame they can't minister. And we have no idea how to deal with it, because their typical approach was truth-telling. Here's what you have to do this, don't do that. And it was focused on truth, not much grace, not much mercy. And they're like, what do we do with this? We're not seeing generational multiplication. Well, what we would like to do at this point is have you stand. That'll give you a little break. But I would like you to think of one or two people that perhaps God has brought to your mind during this time that may relate to this, that you're hoping to minister to. And as you're watching this, I'd like you to pray for them. And this little video that Christine helped us put together focuses on how you might feel, but it focuses on the promises of God in His Word to change that identity, to move in, and the promises of God to make you new and make you whole. And by the way, this is a powerful piece here as we get people into the Word on God's promises on our identity in terms of who we are. So much of it relates to that. But as you watch this, I would just encourage you to be praying for these individuals that God brings to your mind as you take a look at this. One of our values is we believe in the transforming power of the gospel. You can see more about that in a devotional book we've put together called The New Me. You can take a look on the table later. You can also see part 1 of that video on YouTube, and we'll give you information on that as well. Lord, please fulfill your promises. Well, a lot of times as we're working with people and discipling them, helping them grow, we're climbing what we could call discipleship mountain. And we're helping them grow up, deepen, become more mature, and develop. But what we're finding more and more is what happens when the mountain you're climbing of maturity really turns out to be an iceberg. And 7/8 of the iceberg is underwater. How are we dealing with those inner issues, those heart issues, those deep issues in people, as opposed to just the things of all sorts of activities? Because you've got shame and underlying wounding in this process, in these issues. What we've tried to do is put together an illustration. I believe it's in your handout at the bottom of page 3, to try to visualize the various issues and parts of shame and shame's possible progression. At birth, and this is usually experienced by children under the age of 2 or maybe 3, the experience of no shame is something they can have. Now, once you pass that, it's not an option for adults living in a fallen world. Then you move to childlike shame, embarrassment and blushing when seen uncovered, shyness, hiding from others. That's a childlike shame. And then we've also talked a little bit about a healthy shame, which is an awareness of our core inadequacy as a human being, our lack of being perfect. It's the idea that we're not only created in the image of God, but somehow we're also a fallen being. But it's a shame that leads us to the heart of God because we recognize the inadequacy. But then there is what we could call either cultural or personal shame, where we start hiding, wearing masks, the desire to save face in general, protecting one's image, awareness of the need to manage others' face and have them protect my face. This is where we're experiencing those feelings of shame inside. But that may progress, if unresolved, to what we would call a toxic shame, where the shame starts damaging the soul and providing wounding. Deep humiliation, disgrace, or dishonor. In 1 Samuel, David says, I feel like a flea, a dead dog. It's that other image that I showed of the pile. And if that is unchecked, it can get to the point of shamelessness, seared conscience, where there's a vow to live without shame, a vow to experience all human behavior without a sense of being flawed. That sense of overwhelming numbness in the process. This is a very, very dangerous place to live because it goes beyond what God ever intended in that process. So this is our attempt to try to explain various aspects of shame, and we trust it helps you in your understanding.